Hideo Gosha. A name that has been spoken many times on this channel alone. Not only has he been referenced plenty of times by myself, but even my first review was of his 1969 chambara, Goyoken. Despite his presence on samurai cinema, we've never explored the man behind some of chambara's most iconic titles. So, who is Hideo Gosha? Born February 26, 1929 in Tokyo, a young Gosha would find himself joining the Imperial Navy during the events of the Second World War. Afterwards, he would earn himself a business degree and work for the television industry. He would rise through the ranks and land himself the opportunity to produce and direct for the newly founded Fuji Television. Gosha would see success with his hit television series and would start a career in cinema due to his success. Gosha would direct and produce some of the best chambara films during the 1960s, with titles such as Sword of the Beast, The Secret of the Urn, Goyoken, and let's not forget Samurai Wolf 1 and 2. In the 70s, Gosha's work would stray away from the chambara genre and focus more on gangster dramas about the Yakuza. Many critics would claim this era as the beginning of the end of Gosha's career. In the 80s, Gosha would see a decline in his popularity as he began a new period of his creative career. He would be enamored with the rough and brutal life of prostitution and sex work, his energies being more towards realism, violence, and sexuality. Despite being box office successes, they were lambasted by critics everywhere. Gosha would have the last laugh as he received the Japan Academy Prize for Director of the Year for his 1983 film, The Geisha. Years would pass and Gosha would keep producing and directing films till his untimely death in 1992 from cancer. The 63-year-old director's last film would be the 1992 passion project called The Oil Hell Murder. After his death, Gosha's work would still be remembered and praised, mostly his early chambara films. His films would influence and inspire future filmmakers for decades to come. Even Rian Johnson cited one of Gosha's films as inspiration for The Last Jedi. And it all started with today's film. It's a 1964 chambara film based off of Gosha's hit television series of the same name. It's a story of desperation, deception, and the samurai code. We're looking at Hideo Gosha's first full-length film, 3 Outlaw Samurai. I'll be your host, GojiraFerret. Let's begin. In circa 1957, a young and creative Hideo Gosha would leave Nippon Television and join Fuji Television. Gosha would impress his superiors and be given the opportunity to produce and direct. Gosha's first show would be a series chronicling the adventures of 3 roaming samurai. Their journey would garner a ton of popularity and notoriety, not just for the show, but for Gosha as well. The show, 3 Outlaw Samurai, would impress the heads of Shochiku Studio, and Gosha would be given the green light to make his cinematic debut to moviegoers. Gosha would choose to tell the origin story of his 3 roaming samurai in his popular series. With the help of Keiichi Abe, with uncredited assistance of Genichi Kishimoto and Ieze Boroshiba in the writing room, Gosha's first full-length feature was well underway. It would star Tetsuro Tamba, Isamu Nagado, and Mikihiro Hira as the 3 titular characters Shiba, Sakura, and Kikyo, respectively. Tetsuro would work on other projects with Gosha later on after this film. Cinematographer Tadashi Sakai would join the crew, with Junichi Osumi as art director. Shigeru Fujita would head the costume department, with Hiroyasu Hayashi designing the set pieces. Every sword swing would be choreographed by stuntman Kentaro Yuasa, who would also be making his first film debut. Music would be composed by Toshiaki Shushima, and the sound department would be led by Masahiro Fukuyasu. Filmed in black and white, 3 Outlaw Samurai would be released by Shochiku Studio in May 13, 1964, under the original name Sanbiki no Samurai. The United States would see a release in February 1965 with its more known English title. 3 Outlaw Samurai would receive positive reviews, and its writing would be the most praised, many critics citing the narratives of Kurosawa himself, which is a pretty big compliment. But is all this praise warranted? Is the writing and characters as good as critics have said? Let's see how well this film has aged and dig into the plot. Our story begins with a roaming samurai named Shiba coming across a rice mill with 3 desperate and starved farmers holding a young woman hostage. The young woman is named Aya, the daughter of the magistrate Masushida, who has used his power to tax the farmers deeper into poverty. Shiba makes an agreement with the 3 farmers that he won't interfere and uses the mill as shelter for the night. Back at the magistrate's fortress, the news of Aya's abduction reaches Masushida, and he mobilizes his men. A skilled samurai, Kikyo, refuses to join Matsushita and his party, believing that killing peasants is beneath him. The night comes, and the mill is surrounded by the magistrate's men. Negotiations for Aya's release deteriorate as Matsushita's men raid the mill, causing Shiba to step in and defend the unmatched farmers. Fearing the altercation will endanger Aya's life, Matsushita makes a retreat. Matsushita employs the help of skilled swordsmen he has arrested, and we meet Sakura, a light-hearted and skilled spearman. The magistrate promises fortune and freedom if the swordmen are successful in rescuing Aya. As another night falls, Kikyo leads the group of newly hired thugs with Sakura in tow. Shiba confronts the band of swordsmen and defends himself against them. Sakura steps in and squares off with Shiba. The two men have a dialogue, and Sakura learns his targets are poor farmers. Disgusted by the magistrate's orders, Sakura joins Shiba. Kikyo refuses to step in and join Shiba, stating that the cruel magistrate gives him a luxurious life that he enjoys feeding off of. The altercation ends, and Sakura joins Shiba in the mill. The next morning, the desperate magistrate hires a group of mercenary ronin and promises them a hefty payout. Kikyo is sent to a whorehouse where he is ordered to purchase Oyasu, one of the farmer's daughters who was sold into prostitution years prior to be used as leverage. Later that day, Oyasu's cries are heard outside the mill as the magistrate's men beat and torture the young woman before her father. Matsushita opens negotiations again for Aya's safe return, but Oyasu's life expires from her beating. Her father, now enraged, attempts to kill Aya, but Shiba and Sakura stop him. Shiba offers himself to receive punishment in place of the farmers and forces the magistrate to agree that no harm will come to the peasants. Matsushita agrees and gives his word as a samurai that Shiba's terms would be met, and takes the samurai into custody. Shiba is beaten over 100 times with a club by Matsushita's men and thrown into a flooded cell to rot. Aya, hearing Shiba being beaten, begs her father to stop the punishment, but the magistrate shows his cruel intentions and allows the punishment to continue. The magistrate betrays his word as a samurai, and the three farmers are ambushed by Matsushita's mercs. Just before the last farmer is slain, he takes the petition for the domain lord that would expose the magistrate's corruption and sends it floating down a stream. As the petition drifts safely away, he is murdered by the mercenaries. The mercenaries return to Matsushita and tell him that they have the petition, despite them failing to recover it. The mercs arrange a meeting later that night in the forest to exchange the petition for a higher price. The magistrate, suspicious of their deception, sends his best swordsmen to kill the mercs and tie up loose ends. The group of mercenaries arrive at the forest during the night and are systematically slain by Matsushita's men. Meanwhile, Sakura sneaks into Matsushita's fortress and attempts to rescue Shiba. He comes across a servant who hailed from the same village as the farmers and joins Sakura. The two are successful in distracting Matsushita's men long enough for Shiba to escape, but at the cost of the young servant's life. Shiba, now being assisted by Aya, is able to leave the fortress and head back to the rice mill to recover. While Sakura nurses Shiba back to health, he comes across the farmer's petition on a stream bank. Back at Matsushita's fortress, he sends his swordsman to assassinate Kikyo. The assassination attempt is a failure as Kikyo's swordsmanship outclasses his attackers. The former magistrate samurai denounces Matsushita and joins Shiba at the mill. Kikyo tells Shiba that things are about to become worse, as Matsushita is sending the clan's best man, Aouchi, to kill them. While visiting the farming village, Sakura comes across the remaining men of the magistrates. They bargain the lives of the farmers for Sakura to abandon the mill. Sakura agrees and flees, abandoning Shiba and Kikyo. Things come to a head as Aouchi and his soldiers raid the mill, but Shiba and Kikyo are able to hold their own against the attack. Sakura hears the sounds of combat and feels remorse for abandoning his friends, and decides to join them with his spear in hand. The three samurai are able to defend themselves against the soldiers, and Aouchi issues a challenge. Shiba steps up, and the two are pitted in a long strategic battle. After the two size each other up, Shiba ends up as the victor. With all the opposition defeated, Shiba takes the petition and tries to intercept the domain lord's procession that is passing through. As he tries to encourage the farmers to stand up and give the petition to the lord, he realizes the farmers are fearful, every one of them cowering for fear that they will be killed for interfering with the procession. Shiba abandons giving the petition to the lord and confronts Matsushita face to face. He ambushes the magistrate in his fortress and threatens to kill the begging Matsushita. As the cowardly magistrate pleads for his life, Aya steps in and begs for her father to be spared. Shiba, his blade poised to take Matsushita's life, drops his sword and chops the magistrate's top knot off. He tells the magistrate to go show his disgrace to the lord and the peasants as he leaves the fortress. Back at the highway crossing, Shiba, Sakura, and Kikyo are reunited. All three are unaware of where to go next. Using Aya's hairpin, Shiba sets a course, and the three outlaw samurai wander, thus beginning the events of the television series. Cinematography is on par with the given era. It uses tight shots with smooth panning during scenes with intense moments. What stands out the most is Sakai's use of the eye lighting, or Shatner's light. This is a lighting technique employed back in the day to circumvent the limitations of older cameras, where, by using a slit of light running horizontally across an actor's brow, would help emphasize emotion and facial expressions. The name Shatner's light would be popularized by the television series Star Trek, where the technique was used whenever William Shatner was on screen. Shintaro Shogai was in charge of lighting department for this film, and I love how Sakai utilized it. With this film having a decent narrative to be driven, acting had to be a strong part of the film. Despite having Tatsuro Tamba starring, I surprisingly wasn't too enthralled with his performance. Not saying it was bad though. The character of Shiba was a very over-the-top, lawfully good character, so good to a flaw. He came off as naive at times, and I feel as if he wasn't so good and trusting that some of the situations could have been avoided. This is possibly because Shiba is a television character, and due to episodes being shorter than movies, a character's personality is kept to the most basic form. Yes, as time passes with every episode, a character can grow and develop, but their core motivations are simple. I found the character of Sakura more entertaining with his playful and light-hearted performance. I even laughed a few times due to his offbeat takes and deliveries. Action is pretty solid. Gosha's work usually utilizes slower and more methodical duels opposed to the quick and flashy ones employed by later directors. There was a lack of blood in my opinion, but since I'm coming off of the brutal depiction of violence from the Sword of Doom, maybe the bar has been set a little bit too high. Tetsuo has the most action, and Shiba uses hand-to-hand martial arts to defend himself when he is unarmed. History buffs will be pleased to see the use of Jujutsu, a wrestling technique used by samurai whenever they were unarmed, so that was a nice touch since you rarely see hand-to-hand in chambara. Writing is the most praised component of this film, and to keep things short, yes, it is worthy of the praise. This film has an interesting story to tell, and the narrative is driven in a direction with little to no diversions from the main plot. I say little because there is a subplot involving Sakura, where he accidentally kills a farmer, thinking he was a thief. The plot goes through a good portion of the film, with Sakura's guilt slowly eating away at him until he eventually reveals the truth. Unfortunately, the payoff isn't good, as once the truth of Sakura murdering the farmer is revealed, there's no drama or conflict. It just stops being a plot. Despite this, the main plot is solid and the subplot doesn't take away from the overall story. The film's score has been described as bombastic, but to me it was another on-par aspect. There were intense scores used for intense scenes and nothing seemed to be out of place. Sadly, there isn't anything unique to the score, no use of different or interesting instruments to set the music apart from its peers. 3 Outlaw Samurai isn't just a great work of one of Chambara's greatest filmmakers. It's a cornerstone of samurai films. It set the pace for a new generation of on-screen swordsmen and broke some rules while also staying within the bounds of what makes chambara what it is. This film sadly could be contributed to Gosha's decline in popularity, being so good that everyone compared his later works to it. 3 Outlaw Samurai is lightning in a bottle, and Gosha was expected to capture that lightning every time he made a film, which was an unfair expectation. Even today, many of his works of the 70s and the 80s are compared to his early chambaras, despite them being a whole different type of film. I would recommend this film to anyone interested in the chambara genre. It's a good starting point, and made by one of the most passionate and skilled filmmakers. And maybe, just maybe, much like the journey the 3 samurai go on, this film will end with the viewer wandering deeper into more of Gosha's work, a journey that can only begin by giving this film a chance. That was Hideo Gosha's 3 Outlaw Samurai. I hope you enjoyed this review. What do you think of Gosha's first big screen film? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this review, give it a like and subscribe for more future content. And as always, I've been your host GojiraFerret. Thanks for watching.